I can talk myself up. That's fine. Hi, everyone. So, well, my role is the head of digital design within TAFE Digital. So, essentially, we're the content production team within, digital content production team within TAFE Digital. It's a very large team. We have 72 in total in my team, including myself. And we have a number of different skills and capabilities that sit within this group. So we have essentially two parts. Actually, I've got an org chart that I'm going to screen share with you. So let me know when you can see my screen. Can you guys see that org chart? It's quite detailed. So you don't need to read all of the writing there. It's really, I can just talk about it in terms of grouping to help you better understand how we're structured. But look, essentially, as I said, we're the content production team. The way that we're envisaging the model for content production into the future is that requests from skills points will come into TAFE Digital through our product management team that's headed up by Deepa Selklan, and they'll do an assessment of the request, oversee the scoping work that's required in terms of what's needed from TAFE Digital in terms of this request, because, for example, it might be just a component part of a blended program, like a few videos that form part of a blended delivery program, or it could be 100% online, or an AR VR experience, or it could be a variety of things. So they'll oversee the scoping activities and help us pull together a project plan. My team will provide input in terms of the production effort, the resources required, potentially some guidance on the design approach, and the enabling technologies, timelines for delivery, and so forth. So that's essentially how that entry point into TAFE Digital will work. And then once that's all defined, and the idea is then it'll come into the digital design team to make the content, essentially. So that's where we fit in. Now, you guys can all see that slide, yes? You can see that? Okay, great. So essentially the team, headed up by myself, is in two parts. So the first part is what I call our learning design arm of the team. Now, you don't need to read all of that text on screen, so don't strain your eyes there. Joni, I can see you trying to read that. It's a bit too detailed for you to do that.
I was looking at names, sorry.
So this is for my sake, because the other thing to point out with my team is that we're very geographically dispersed. So we have a couple of very concentrated locations. So we have a big presence here in Armidale at the TAFE Digital headquarters, and we have a big presence in Strathfield. We have a number of people in Coffs Harbour and so forth, but we actually are quite spread out across the state. So that's one of our big challenges. We are spread out. But back to what I was talking about in terms of the team structure. We have a learning design arm, and that's headed up by Vicky Marchant, who some of you may know. So Vicky has come from Illawarra, and she's heading up the design group, which is here on the left of screen. Now, in terms of the way that arm of the digital design team is structured, we have 6 lead learning designers, and beneath those leads, we have 10 senior learning designers. We also have 14 learning designers, just regular learning designers, and we have also 5 support officers to support on all of the activities that are occurring in that design space. So in terms of the way that part of the team is structured, all of the senior learning designers, the learning designers, and the support officers are broken into smaller groups. They're broken into 6 separate functional teams that report up to each of those teams report up to one of those lead designers. So it's a very big part of the team. All up, including the universal design team, which is a team of 3, which I'll talk about in a moment. That design part of the team is 39 people. So it's a very big part of the team. And the primary, the key focus for them is design, but also project management through the life cycle of production. So any projects that come in will get assigned a design lead to kick off the project, to help provide oversight of the project, a senior learning designer will be appointed. They'll be the devoted project manager for it, and we'll pull together a production team of designers, out of that pool based on, the required skill sets for the given project and availability of people, in terms of, bandwidth, who's got bandwidth to be able to come in and fulfill the project requirements. So that's how that part of the team is structured. As I said, they're very geographically dispersed, so that's one of our challenges. How do we maintain a high-performing, cohesive team when we're so dispersed, and how do we monitor, what people are working on? How do we help them with their challenges and so forth? Then we have our universal design team, which is also part of the design arm of the digital design team. And that's headed up by Naomi McGrath, and she's here in Armidale, and she has two people. This slide needs to be updated because Amy is actually, she won't be working with us, but we have an accessibility design support officer within that team, as well as an Aboriginal design support officer. The aim being with the Aboriginal design person to bring that cultural lens to our design approach to make sure that we're culturally inclusive in that respect. I'll just pause there. Did anyone have any comments or questions? Hopefully that was clear what that part of my team is doing.
Yeah, it is. And can I just make a comment, if that's okay?
Sure.
So I just want to let you know that as far as the product development support, I also have a cultural customisation officer, which actually supports the skills points, which will support the skills points around, I suppose, Aboriginal culturally appropriate resources. And
Great.
I've also got another position which is inherent requirements. Although it's not about accessibility, it's also identifying how can we actually support students that may not be able to actually enrol in specific courses. How are we going to support students that have varying sort of disabilities? So I didn't realise that you had those two positions. It might be good to sort of connect
Absolutely.
people up together.
Yeah, well, look, Joe, if you want to connect them, the best person to contact would be Vicky and Naomi McGrath, and it would be great if you could, set up a time to have those, or
Sure.
the members of your team and those team members of mine collaborate, because I agree that that's a fantastic opportunity to put our heads together. So Naomi, just in terms of her lens, let me just say she's been working on a universal design strategy for our content, but it would be great to connect in with you and sense check that, make sure it's in alignment with the thinking in your team, and well, let's work together on meeting that that ambition to be culturally inclusive.
Yeah, I think it's I think with these positions we just have to, there's some real synergies there, Adam, and I think that we can
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I've also I'm not sure how across you are, but there's an equity team in Strathfield down at the former OTEN office, and we've headed up by Karen Alton. Do you know that team?
Yeah, I know Karen. What,
Yeah.
is that a statewide team?
Well, they were former OTEN, but I understand, now, well, I'm not sure what the scope of Karen's remit is now, but of course OTEN doesn't exist now, and they've been, we're one TAFE now, so it would be, I just want to help you join the dots there. It could be worth connecting with Karen now to find out where the alignment is there, because that's something that Naomi has recently done as well.
Yeah, because I think that team, that comes under student services, and I think
it does there. That's right.
They'll be going through a transition next year, so yeah, it would be good to be across that as well. So thanks, Adam.
Yeah, sure. So look, that's a very brief summary of the learning designers. As I said, they're also, our project management capability also exists within that team. So particularly in the senior learning design group. So they'll be the project managers for specific projects that TAFE Digital takes on, and oversee the project management through the life cycle of production. So that's also within their remit. The second part of the team is what I call loosely our build team. So our designers design content, our our build team, they actually build the digital artifacts using various technologies. So the way that that's represented here is that there's essentially 5 functional teams that report up to the manager of creative multimedia, which is Robert Goreski. He's started with us a couple of months ago in April. So Robert has 5 functional teams. So they are, from left to right, the the writing and editing team, which is a lead and 3 writers. Now, the primary remit of that team is to make our content less wordy and academic and make it much more readable and improve the student experience of our content, and also to help us pick up typos and grammatical structural errors and that kind of work. So essentially that's the area that they're focused in, and also writing for digital delivery. So of course there's some different principles associated with writing for on-screen content versus on paper content, and they're our means of driving standardization in that space. We also have what we call a mixed reality team, or you'll probably recognize the term augmented and virtual reality a bit better. So the idea is mixed reality kind of denotes the entire spectrum from augmented through to virtual reality, in case you're wondering what that meant. But for those of you, are you all familiar with augmented and virtual reality? Yeah. Okay, so I won't spend too much time talking about what that is, but we've established a team. We're almost completely finished recruitment, so this slide, as I said, needs updating. But the ambition here is for us to introduce more and more of augmented and virtual reality content into our standard offering. It's a big ambition of TAFE Digital to be very progressive in this space and bring cutting edge learning technologies like this into our standard offerings. So we've set up a team here, primarily based in Armidale, and they're supporting that kind of content development. We've invested heavily in this space, and we've got very progressive technological infrastructure to enable quite sophisticated content development. As an example, quite recently, and it was a relatively quick win for us, surprisingly, is there was a opportunity to come up to create an augmented reality experience in the optical dispensing space. So what the guys did was create a virtual eyeball that you can pull apart by layers to see the structure of the eyeball and how it all works. And that's just been released in the last couple of weeks and was very well received. But we're doing, David has been involved with this on the call. So David has also been heavily involved in that during his time at TAFE Digital, and he was overseeing, work in the building and construction space, the cybersecurity space, in the AutoCAD space, and so forth. So we're making good inroads in that space, largely thanks to David. So thank you, mate. Then we've got a graphic design team, and we have 6 in total in that team. So that team is charged with making sure that all of our digital collateral is on brand, and we create a good student experience of our content. It's visually designed in the right ways. Video production team, which I think is pretty self-evident what those guys are doing. They're producing video content. That's a brand new team. They've also just started. They're going to be they are based in Strathfield, down in Sydney. One of our big challenges there is that we have a devoted facility space in Building C down there in Strathfield, but it's way out of date. It's like a decade out of date, and we need to refurbish that space. We also need to procure equipment. So that's one of the big challenges that we've got in our team at the moment, to get that video capability established quickly, because we have already a lot of video content requests. And the last one, group here is called the Digital Implementation Team. And that's a team of 7. They're all based here in Armidale. And essentially there's 2 key aspects of the role of this team. One is to build digital artifacts. So think of things like, e-learning objects, or you might know them as RISE objects, articulate RISE objects, basically building e-learning experiences that are loaded onto learning management system or a learning platform. So that's part 1 of their role, and part 2 is to package all of the different digital assets that are created within our team and package them up and deploy them on the allocated platform that we're going to be distributing content out to students on. So there's quite a number of platforms at the moment while we're kind of merging into one TAFE. So it's quite a technical challenge that we're working on, is how do we drive consistency when we've got an inconsistent platform for delivery, and we want to make sure that the student experience is optimal. So I'll just pause there. I've done a lot of talking. Did anyone have any questions or would like to know more information about any of that?
Oh, well, okay. Well, everyone's going okay. I don't know, Alison, Dave, or Joni, or Kim, have you got any comments or questions? So, Adam, I might just make another comment. Just
Sure.
to last space, the implementation people, like we also have product implementation coordinators, and one of the things that that they are tasked with is actually developing an implementation plan to assist the regions to actually implement the new products. So I can see some synergies there. I don't know, have you guys spoken or aware of those positions?
Is it the same kind of implementation, Adam? I can't see the job titles.
Yeah, look, there's a lead digital implementation and then digital builders. So I do think that it's not crossover, but connectivity there. So just to explain a little bit further, the role of this team is, like I said, we build a range of different digital products that collectively create a course. They actually, for example, in our new platform that's being built at the moment, they would take all of that collateral and all those artifacts, put them into the actual learning platform in accordance with the design approach that's been specified, and package that all up and actually then put it through a testing procedure to make sure that it's technically working as expected and that the student experience is right. But in terms of the actual rollout, I'm also seeking clarity around and it would probably be a handoff, I imagine, to either you guys or another part of ETG, because essentially you're our clients, so we would be building the product, packaging it up on the platform, testing it ourselves to make sure that we're satisfied with it, and then saying, hey, we think it's ready, can you please take it and deploy it, make it live in the environment and roll it out to students. That's the way that I would see it. Does that align with your thinking, Joe?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, how does the learning bank sort of sit within that as well? That's all, because if you're packaging up the resources, is it, I know you're talking about putting it in the learning management system, but is it also going to be available in the learning bank? Probably just a question, and maybe we haven't sort of, we're not to that point of discussion, but I think that's the other sort of area.
That would be part of our handover, I imagine, that we hand over. We could potentially go in and put the assets into as part of our workflow. We haven't got to that yet, Joe, admittedly, but I would imagine that once we've packaged it up on the platform and sold, it's ready for deployment. Another activity on our side most likely would be to also, put those products into Aquella as part of our workflow and say that they're ready, or hand them over to somebody else to put them into the learning bank.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that makes sense. And just with the developing, are you sort of developing resources to support students or to support teachers for e-learning? Is that part of the remit there, or is that not? Is it really focused on the product?
When you say resources to support students, could you give me an example? Like, what do you think?
You might have like something. I don't know if you're actually going to be using some particular video format for a really simple example, that you've sort of got something there that actually supports the student to actually use the resource. Are you sort of thinking in that way, or
like performance support resources?
Yeah. You thinking anything in that space, or not really?
Well, look, it hasn't really come up in conversation, but I would imagine if we've identified, you know, a potential risk that the student won't know what to do. I mean, ideally, we would be providing very explicit instructions and creating a user experience that's intuitive and that's going to, you know, just be, you know, obvious for the student. But I guess if we identified that there's a problem in terms of a potential risk that a student won't know what the activity is or how to perform it, we would be providing them with instruction and, you know, any guidance necessary. So I would say, yeah, that would fall within our remit, but it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
So, look, that's a very high-level overview of what my team is doing, and, you know, just to share where we're up to, we're very heavily focused at the moment on getting the courses that need to be ready for the new TAFE digital learning platform launch. So there's a lot of work going on in that space. We also have some training package updates that are a key focus because, you know, they're compliant. It's a compliance requirement, mandatory requirement. We also are very heavily focused on designing our production framework and methodologies and getting our processes sorted and looking at the ways that we can best automate those processes so that it can be as efficient as possible and that we're able to be able to meet the demand that's coming through. I'm sure you've all heard about this talk of the top 83. That's going to have a very big impact on my team in terms of, because, you know, anything that has a digital that is digital, that falls within the top 83 courses will need to be produced by my team. So we're working hard to get ourselves set up for such a very large influx of work requests.
Yeah, same for us, Adam.
Why I do have a question for you. Why I've got you all on the call. So one thing that has come up a couple of times, and I was planning on connecting with you at some point, Joe, I might as well ask you now, is in terms of assessment design, can you maybe talk to...
Yes.
Can you maybe tell me a little bit about how you guys are seeing that working? I heard a laugh there. I'm not sure if I touched on a sore spot. I don't know.
No, it's just very topical.
Yeah.
Obviously, I suppose I'm probably not sharing anything out of school because it was discussed at the roadshow yesterday. When we're talking about the top 83 courses, and we all know the reasons why they've been chosen, what is now coming to a discussion is when we're saying that, what does that mean? Like, are we actually developing a certain amount of product, and what is the product? And we've had this conversation many times. Is that like, is it down to the details of PowerPoints, handouts, all of those sorts of things, or is it at a higher level where we're sort of talking about a master TAS and then there's like a subject learning guide that supports it, that shows people how to do the delivery? I think that's one consideration. It's about when we're looking at the top 83, are we looking at making sure it's for all new students that actually enrol next year so that those products are actually ready? So anybody that's enrolled previous to that won't have any sort of access to it. Or is it every single thing, which is not doable? I think that's starting to dawn on a few people. But the other consideration and discussion that was happening yesterday was, should it be just focused on assessment? So should we be trying to look at having every assessment done for those top 83? And then what will happen from that? It will get padded out as we start developing the resources. So in one space, there's discussion about the top 83, but there's also discussion about the assessment design as far as standards and compliance are concerned. So we have that other sort of whole lot of stakeholders in that space that are looking to us to say they haven't got time to look at the templates, they haven't got time to actually look at what that means. So it looks as though from our team we'll be leading the assessment template development, but having said that, there's got to be some sort of connection with your team as well, Adam, as to what does that mean? Like, does the assessment have to be modified for whatever delivery mode it is, or can we actually create assessments that will go across whatever delivery mode? I don't know. I've got an expert in the room just sort of saying no, but anyway, I'll just leave that there. But is it, when you're talking about assessment design, are you talking about the formative and the summative? Because I'm also imagining within your learning design, Adam, that you're also talking about formative assessment tasks along the way. So that's probably a long-winded answer, but we get asked about assessment design all the time because we're finding that that's where the greatest variance is, that we've got all sorts of different, we've got no sort of consistency around our assessments. And it's also a hot topic as far as compliance because it's always an area that we're non-compliant with our assessments. So,
Right.
but we are working, we will be working on looking at all of the templates. We'll be looking at how do we get that consistency. So I might touch base with Vicky on it, Adam, and get her that connection. Like we've made a bit of a connection. She's got us to look at a few assessments from some of the online courses that you'll be delivering from next semester. But at the moment, we haven't got a framework in place. We haven't got what the processes are. Like we're even just back to the templates don't work. That's where we're at. So that's probably, at the initial stage. And that's because we've been waiting for standards of compliance and now they haven't got time. And given this new 83 course priorities, that's going to change because somebody's got to do it quickly.
Yeah. Well, look, that was helpful. I know it was long-winded, but it was helpful just to understand where it's at because, part of my question there was relating to assessment design and, is there going to be a consistent design approach adopted, and what's the role of my team, if do we need to adapt or modify? Will we be given explicit instructions in terms of the assessment design, and do we need, like I said, need to modify it for digital delivery and so forth? So those are the kinds of questions I'm asking myself. It sounds like they're already on your radar. And
well, within my team, I have 3 assessment designers that have responsibility, for the 1,200 courses, hundreds of thousands of units that we've got. So we can't, I suppose the way the skills points have been viewing it, it's actually trying to build their capacity and capability around assessment design because it can't rely on 3 people to actually check every assessment possibly. No. So we're just trying to work out strategically how we can do that, and I think it'd be great to sort of have representatives from your team as part of that whole process that we're just about to launch into. Yeah.
Sure.
Adam, I have a question. Only because we brought up assessment design, and I'm Lucia. I am one of the assessment designers.
Hey, Lucia, how you doing?
So, my question is around your build team.
Yes.
And when you said that, particularly with your content, that you would have your team and translate it to online space, because obviously it is a different language. I'm presuming the assessments, to some degree, that would be the case. Bearing in mind that the assessments are mapped to unit of competency. So when they go to your team and they work with your team, what kind of adjustments do they make? Do they refer back to the mapping document so that they're not changing things drastically so that it doesn't map again? Or so it could change the mapping?
Well, we certainly wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't be adjusting anything that's going to, break our compliance. So, no, I think that's just, from my point of view, the challenge would be for us to all clearly communicate and understand the boundaries. So when we get, for example, delivered an assessment and for us to put it online, what we can and can't do or what we should and shouldn't do, it would be great if we can be briefed as the request comes in, and we can make sure that we develop it or work on it in accordance with requirements. So I would say it's more about a communication piece and making sure that it's built into our workflow.
Right, so more around the design rather than the content. So, for example, can you translate this assessment to a drag and drop or into a multiple choice or into, something around that, or is it more around? Yeah,
well, like if, for example, you say this can't be adjusted in any way, it's as it is. You need to, deliver it exactly as is, potentially using another medium, like, for example, an online version. We'll take that and we'll design it in accordance with that guidance. If you say you've got some creative liberty here are the boundaries of what you can do, but you can't do this and that, we'll make sure that we design it like like that, like I said, in accordance with the instructions provided. But I guess what I was trying to establish with this line of questioning was, well, starting to get a feel for where the boundaries are in that space so that we don't make any mistakes and break any rules.
Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Hi, Adam. This is Kim.
Hey, Kim. How you going?
I'm good, thanks. Hi. I'm a product implementation coordinator, and I have a question about the digital build. Do you see the new one platform as a platform that also support blended delivery?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk going on about that at the moment, and I think in the long term, it's a speculation, it's only a guess, but I think in the long term, that will likely be the blended delivery platform. At the moment, it's in development with the key focus on enabling 100% online for TAFE digital courseware. But I know that there's talk at quite senior levels of its potential to be the one TAFE platform. So my speculation is it makes sense to do that, but it's not likely to be in the near future because there's a lot of work to do to be able to start delivering blended delivery on it, because like I said, the focus to date is to get it ready for 100% online.
I'm working on a project for the infrastructure, energy and construction skill point. They have 2 online units that are that is in the pipeline for TAFE Digital, 2 online unit for Certificate 3 in plumbing. I understand that the head of skill point would like it to be delivered from the new platform, and they are waiting for that. Is that what you are understanding or not?
Well,
and it's going to be for blended.
Yeah. So it's probably Lynn Rickard is probably more across that. That one hasn't come across my slate yet, but
right.
If you'd like to, we can have a more detailed conversation to find out what's proposed. I would say at the moment, though, if it is a blended delivery, if it's a component part, it wouldn't be in scope in the near future, but it could be something that we could look at down the track a little bit. The key focus right now for the platform is to get it ready to launch some TAFE digital courses by the end of July.
Okay, thanks.
That's where the primary focus is right now. And as I said, I think it does make sense to make it the blended delivery platform of the one TAFE moving forward, but we're not there yet. So the solutions in the near term will need to be developed in accordance with what we have right now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's all right. You're welcome.